Today, I want to talk about this Adam Schiff tweet where he says, I'll just put it up real quick. He says, Israel is experiencing its own 9/11. There is no both sides to this attack. And I just want to talk about that because they are kind of framing it as it's Israel's 9/11. And I think it's worth talking about. I'm going to look at a few trends online and try to be as honest and respectful as possible. It's the Dream Rare podcast. We're live, and I'll get into it in a second once people get in.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me. Let's see, Facebook's live, YouTube's live, and let's get into the story today. So I got a few tweets, a few takes, and I'm going to look at a few trends, talk about a few stuff in an abstract way that I think a lot of people aren't covering. And then I want to ask the question, is this Israel's 9/11? Because it seems like they are broadcasting it that way. And I'm not saying it's not terrible. 9/11 was horrible. What happened in Israel is horrible. I don't want to be misconstrued or taken out of context. But as an American with 9/11, obviously wars came, trillions of dollars of spending, the Patriot Act. And most Americans would probably say at this point that what we thought was going to happen and what actually happened ended up being two different things. So I think it's worth having a conversation about. So let's look at the tweet real quick. Adam Schiff said, Israel is experiencing its own 9/11. There is no both sides to this attack. Hamas is a terrorist group mass murdering hundreds of innocent Israelis and taking women and children hostage. The U.S. must stand ready to provide Israel with the support it needs to defend itself, including humanitarian aid and funding for the Iron Dome. So there is no two sides to this attack. It's Israel's 9/11, and the U.S. must be ready to give Israel humanitarian aid. Now I want to look at some other perspectives because very rarely do Democrats and Republicans agree on anything. You'll see Adam Schiff and Ron DeSantis disagree on 99% of topics, but this one, Ron DeSantis is very similar. I mean, he didn't use that exact rhetoric, but I just want to show you DeSantis's tweet, and then I want to show you how a lot of people in Republican media are saying that this is Joe Biden's fault, and a lot of people in Democrat media are saying that this is Donald Trump's fault. And I'm not asking you to believe one side or the other. I'm just reporting it, and I trust your intelligence to believe what you want. But let me just show you real quick. So this is DeSantis. He said the dastardly terrorist attacks perpetrated against innocent Israeli civilians by Iran-backed terror group Hamas deserve a swift and lethal response. Israel not only has the right to defend itself against these attacks, it has a duty to respond with overwhelming force. I stand with Israel. America must stand with Israel. That's Ron DeSantis. Now I'm going to just show you how the left-wing media is blaming Trump. They say it isn't hard to follow. Trump gave military intel to the Russians. The Russians, who are extremely close allies with Iran, gave it to Iran. This is why intel security matters. Republicans don't care. Hamas used it to attack Israel. So they're trying to frame it as Trump gave information to Russians, and they used that in order to attack Israel. And then this is DC Drano. He said Trump moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, and Hamas never invaded Israel. Biden gave $6 billion to Iran, and now 200 plus Israelis are dead after the worst invasion of Israel in decades. I think it goes beyond incompetence. I believe Biden wanted this evil to be unleashed. So before I get into the weeds of it, I just want to kind of put out trends and show you what's going on, because I don't want to talk down to my audience. There's some people who live in Israel who follow me. I expect them to feel differently. There's people who are probably born in Palestine who watch me who feel differently. So I trust your intelligence and your position. If you do have a strong stance one way or the other, that's for you to decide. I don't think I'm going to sway you, and I'm not trying to, but I do want to just kind of show you these things. So Adam Schiff says this is Israel's 9/11. Okay. DeSantis almost completely agrees with him, as do most Republicans. Okay. Left-wing media is blaming Trump, saying that Trump worked with the Russians and the Russians gave the intel to Iran, and it was Trump who got these people killed. I don't know that I believe that. And then Republican media saying that, Biden is the one who got them killed because of the $6 billion with Iran. Possible. I know that Iran and Palestine and Iran and Russia, et cetera, I know they're all, somewhat aligned. So I just want to go through a few things, and then I want to get to the meat of this argument. First thing I notice is I follow a lot of Republican pages on Instagram. I would say I follow mostly conservative pages. I'm watching something I've never seen before because when these topics used to come up in the past, most Republicans are pro Israel and it's just like Israel, Israel, I stand with Israel. And I'm noticing a shift in the audiences of people. Like, I'll just give you two examples. One is a Patrick Bet David. I like Patrick Bet David, great guy, runs a media company. He posted a long thread about his thoughts on the Israel Palestine situation. And he's usually very popular, right? Whatever he says, usually his audience agrees with him. He's gained a lot of respects from a lot of different people because he's very unique in his approach to media. And I think he taps into the business world, he taps into political world, worldly world, other things outside of politics. Long story short, he was getting ratioed by his audience. I don't think I've ever seen a post of his that most people disagreed with. Most people were in the comment section either supporting Palestine or saying that Israel has done atrocities for the past 30 years, and Patrick in Western media has ignored it. How dare him? And for the first time, I saw Patrick, an incredibly popular person, basically get weighted by his own audience, which overwhelmingly disagreed with his analysis. You don't see that very often. I follow a page called a Typical Liberal. He's also a friend of mine. I'm not saying we're best friends, but I like the guy, right? He's a conservative page making fun of liberals, super pro-Trump, super pro-Israel, super Republican. And I just saw his entire audience countering his narrative. I expected to go to the comment section and see everybody saying, we stand with Israel. We agree with you. It's so terrible what Palestine's doing. But I didn't see that. It was like all people saying, you don't even know what they really think about you and Christians, and your narrative's wrong. You don't know what they're doing. And this is a trend I just want to point out. I'm not telling people to agree with it. I'm not telling people to not be shocked by it or feel however you want to feel. I'm just trying to get outside of like yelling at people and fear mongering and anger and emotions and sharing stuff that I don't know. I'm sticking to what I do know. And I want to point out trends that it seems like most normie pages are posting pro-Palestine stuff in as far as the comment sections, not the actual people. Establishment Democrats and Republicans agree that we need to support Israel. But most Democrats seem like they're like queers for Palestine, or, they're in the streets. They're of like multiple. I think I saw one in Canada, in New York City, in England. Like, they're all out in the streets supporting Palestine against the wishes of the establishment Democrats, even though these people probably overwhelmingly vote Democrat. Fascinating. And then you get to the right wing, where the right wing has always been like a super Zionist hub because, of course, Trump, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Dan Crenshaw. I mean, there's not really a huge difference in their foreign policy. No matter how much people try to frame it or whatever, they all pretty much have the same foreign policy, with the exception being maybe Trump, who is more of like a deal negotiator, and I appreciate that with him. But long story short, PragerU, Daily Wire, it's very pro-Zionist media, where it's like, if you don't like this, it's been this way before the attack. And I'm not, just for the record, I'm not downplaying the attack. It's terrible. It's horrible. It's gross. Anytime people kill or steal innocent civilians, it's disgraceful what Hamas did. I'm not in any ways justifying it at all. It's disgusting and evil. And I hate to see innocent people being a victim. But what I'm trying to say is, like, these pages used to have like the support of all their followers because they've been just telling people this one narrative. And it seems like because of the internet, because of Twitter, because of Facebook, YouTube, because of, alternate platforms, BitChute, Rumble, all of these things, people have been countering the narrative over the last couple of years. And this is what I do want to say to people, because I do think that there is a way to speak the truth and get people on your side. But for so long on the right, you only heard one narrative. And if you ever questioned it, even respectfully, they just said you were hateful and you're this and that. And I think it's led a lot of people to the other side, because if you can't explain your side of it accurately and you just kind of resort to like petty attacks like the left, I noticed it's just like the people are not buying it anymore. The right-wing media that's pushing this stuff out, their audiences are like rebelling against them. Like, they're not buying what they're selling, and it's worth observing. I want to talk to a few more things. First, I want to talk about the 9/11 comparison. I just want to put it up on the screen again so people could see. Here's what Adam Schiff said. I'm going to drink my coffee real quick. He said, Israel is experiencing its own 9/11. There is no both sides of this attack. When it comes to 9/11 in America, 9/11 was a horrible, horrible event. What happened in Israel is a horrible, horrible event. I'm not downplaying 9/11 as an American. It's very real. It's a very sad day. I mean, it's just one of the most destructive days in American history. And it's really dark just knowing that these things happen and thousands of people died. So I just want to be very clear, because anytime you speak about these topics and you don't just throw a flag in your bio and say something generic, everybody accuses you of being this or being that. And I've already seen this script get played out. Okay. I don't agree with what happened on 9/11. It's evil. It's horrible. It hurt my country. It's disgraceful. Thousands of people died. I know people who lost family members. It's horrible. With that being said, the emotion of 9/11, it launched this entire kind of narrative where it's like, we need to go to Iraq. We need to go wherever they send us, Syria, I don't know. It's like, Yemen, freaking Afghanistan. We ended up in like what, Libya, which is like, it's like whatever they do, they need to just go beat up bin Laden overseas, and you can't disagree with it at all. And everything we do from this point on, it is necessary. And don't get it twisted. I think what happened in Israel is evil and horrible, and in no way, shape, or form do I think it's okay. I'm just saying 9/11 in America brought forth multiple different wars, trillions of dollars of spending, thousands of Americans dead, the Patriot Act, which was used to spy on Americans. And this is where I don't feel bad for Republicans in America. And I'm not saying Democrats are any better, but at this time, it was Republicans behind George W. Bush who said, if you don't want the Patriot Act, you must be a terrorist. We're just going to spy on Muslims. And now, Republicans are crying victim saying, oh, we're being persecuted by the FBI and the deep state. Oh, it's like, well, maybe they're using the Patriot Act that you guys wanted to spy on Muslims, and now they're spying on you. I'm pretty sure that is absolutely what's happening. So it doesn't justify what's happening, but if you don't want your liberty to be eradicated, then you can't give it up under the guise of fighting Muslims overseas. We've already run this narrative, and I'm not saying there's no bad Muslims overseas. There's good Muslims overseas and there's bad Muslims overseas. There's peaceful people, there's terrorist organizations. Yeah, it's real. But to give up your freedom and allow the government to spy on you, Republicans walk into this trap every single time. They never learn a lesson, although it does seem like a lot of people are learning in the comment section. And I see the same playbook being run now. For a while, I've told people that if the election were tomorrow, I would vote for DeSantis over Trump. Now, I'm not so sure, because I'm seeing how the DeSantis camp is acting, especially all these influencers that support him. And I'm watching them call good people that I know are good people Nazi sympathizers and all sorts of crazy stuff, because they don't want Israel to like kill a bunch of children. And it's like, it's not saying that what Hamas did is okay. It's obviously not okay, but it's like, and you don't even have to agree with those people. But if you're going to use these left-wing commie, media tactics and just call people Nazis who literally just have an opinion about something that you slightly disagree with, I don't know. Maybe Trump will be better than DeSantis, because DeSantis seems a lot more like Nikki Haley, and his supporters seem like bloodthirsty, unhinged psychopaths. So I'm not saying everybody's like that. Don't get it twisted, but it's like, that's not a way to win my vote. You don't have to agree. You can, disagree with them and explain why. But at this point, I'm just noticing the same 9/11 rhetoric coming out. Adam Schiff says it's the 9/11 of Israel. Well, what happened when 9/11 happened in America? We passed a Patriot Act, and now those same rules of spying on terrorists in America is being used against MAGA, because they view you guys as terrorists. They say, oh, MAGA is terrorists, so now we could spy on them because we gave ourselves the right. And everyone's like, well, we're getting spied on. It's so messed up. You gave them that right. When I disagreed when I was like in my teens and I said, hey, I love America, but I'm not so sure about all this stuff, because I actually knew this shit when I was a kid. I didn't fall for the George W. Bush propaganda. I was told 20 times that's like a teenager, like, oh, what are you, a terrorist? Are you Al Qaeda? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, God forbid you disagree with the narrative of the Republicans when they're starting a war that's to fight the bad Muslims, then it's on you. So I'm just saying, I don't really feel bad for Republicans nowadays, because all the things they're getting persecuted under by the deep state is things that they wanted desperately in the 2000s to go overseas and fight wars. Now that we look at it all, a lot of people think, yeah, America's not the bad guy in the sense of like, we love our country, we love ourselves, we know that we've done some stuff, but like, did we really build a bunch of schools? Is that like, what were we really doing over there? Iraq, Iran, I mean, not Iran, but like Afghanistan, like Libya, Syria. Like, was it worth it? Did we get tricked at all or not? Most people would say, yeah, like the Patriot Act, we got tricked. We got tricked. But now it's so emotional for the next few weeks, you can't question anything, or else they'll call you a Nazi or a Hamas sympathizer or anything. And it's like, listen, I don't agree with any sort of violence against civilians. I think it's horrific what they did to Israel. And if Israel responds, I get it. And to be fair, from like a realistic perspective, Palestine is way outmatched when it comes to weapons and stuff. So when you do that type of stuff, it's evil, but also, you're dealing with a way more technologically advanced country in Israel. And if they do respond, heavily, it's not surprising. And I'm not even saying it's necessarily the wrong thing to do. It's not up to me. I don't run either country, but if you as an American citizen say, hey, I don't want like kids to die over this, and they say, shut up, kill them, kill the kids in there, and then you're like, no, I don't think, I'm not supporting that. I just think that there's a lot of kids there. Like, maybe you should just start. And they say, no, 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 no. And it's like, all right. And I want to show a few tweets real quick, and then I want to get to some more stuff and a philosophical question I have to ask my audience. Here's a few tweets that I found fascinating. This guy pretty much just admitted he wants to genocide them. He said, flatten everything, spare no school, no children's hospital, no old age home, delete their entire gene pool off the face of the earth. That's literally genocidal, but I guess that's okay when he says it. And I want to show you that this is not uncommon. Andrew Clavin, I've been on a show before, he said in 2019, or Iran is blown off the face of the earth in about 15 minutes and the world is better for it. Iran has 87 million people. So Andrew Clavin apparently has the bloodlust to want to kill 87 million people over a foreign conflict. And here's what I'm going to say, because you have to understand, I love America. I'm not Palestinian. I don't have a Palestinian flag in my bio. I don't support Palestine. I'm not Israeli. I'm not Russian. I'm not Ukrainian. I'm not Iranian. I understand Iran doesn't like America, so I'm on the side of America. With that being said, I have to ask this a philosophical question to people. What if somebody just slaughtered 1,000 Americans that you knew, or you knew somebody that knew, and they said, sorry, we did that because Obama did stuff overseas? Well, you guys voted for Obama. You support Obama. You voted for him for 8 years. And it's like, whether you voted for Obama or not, you can't really control the war agenda of America. If there's people who want retribution for what George W. Bush did, or if Joe Biden does something overseas and they say, well, that's your government, you voted for that. And what if it was a bipartisan thing where, Republicans will call it the deep state? No matter who wins, there's a certain, group that kind of just runs the show anyway, whether, Biden or Romney's there, and, Republicans talk about it all the time. For the last 20, 30 years, that agenda isn't really in your control as an American citizen. You vote, you don't always win the election, but even when you win the election, you don't even get your way anyway, because it's kind of a uniparty, and most people believe that. So what if the uniparty commits some sort of atrocities overseas, which is horrible, unexcusable, and then people want to just slaughter you and be like, well, it's because you voted for those people and you support that government? And it's like, do you want to think that way? I think it's evil and horrible what Hamas did. I don't support them. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not waving my flag in New York City. That's not me. With that being said, like, this has been going on for 80, 90 years, and people have been killing each other on both sides. I'm not saying it's like the same, but it's like, what do you want to do? You want to kill thousands of Palestinian children because a terrorist group killed Israelis, and you feel good about shutting off the water and power and electricity of an entire region of millions of people and killing them, most of which, is that what you really want to do? That's not what I want to do, but I have no say. And people will then call me like a sympathizer if I say I don't want a bunch of kids killed. It's like, you got genocidal people on both sides of the equation. I find it disgraceful. I don't want to hurt a single Israeli or Palestinian that's innocent. And I don't think they're responsible for what their governments do. But when you see somebody that does support the genocide of either side, they'll be like, well, they voted for it. I mean, they like Hamas. It's like, do they? Some of them probably do, but I'm sure some of them probably don't. You think a 7-year-old knows the difference between Hamas and, another leadership? Do they even have a chance? Are their elections fair? Maybe they are, but our elections aren't even fair, or most people think they're not fair. So am I supposed to think in a tiny little country like that doesn't even have technology, that they're having 100% fair elections? They probably don't. So it's like, there's a lot of bloodlust out there, and it's disgraceful. But I understand it's a complex situation, so it's really out of my hands. If anybody's offended by my opinion, just know in solace that my opinion doesn't actually matter. Nobody listens to me. My thoughts are not going to shift the scales of the war. And whether it's Israel or Palestine's government, no one gives a shit what I say anyway. So don't really take it that seriously. Like, oh, I can't believe you said that. Yeah, I just said it. So what? What's going to change? Nothing. So I don't have that type of sway. This is just what I'm doing with my channel. I'm noticing people that are saying generic basic stuff, they're getting ratioed, and they don't understand why. And I see their like frustration, and they're like, I don't understand why my whole audience is against me. Like, well, it's because what you're saying doesn't really make that much sense, or at least you're not as like honest or real or raw or like thoughtful as you think you are. And this is happening. I see it in a lot of politics outside of this horrific war that's going on. I've noticed this with the whole Trump DeSantis thing. Like, a lot of Republican influencers have been getting like surpassed by their audience. Like, a lot of people, when they talk to their audience, they think their audience is stupid, and they think that like, oh, I'm going to tell you what to think about everything. I might argue with people nowadays, but I know my audience, some of them are reading books, some of them are listening to podcasts, some of them run $1 million businesses. Like, there's people in my audience that are better at lots of things than me. So in order for me to stay relevant and intelligent and respected by my audience, I have to put out respectable content. But I find in a lot of the media sphere on both sides, but I just follow a lot of Republicans, they're getting upset that their audience is like turning against them and like having different opinions about Trump and DeSantis and stuff. But the reason is because their opinions are outdated. And a lot of time people are getting their opinions from a lot of places. And if your opinion combines with another opinion and yours is way stupider and faker, and it can't hold up to scrutiny, they're going to tell you. And then if you freak out about it, it's like maybe your audience is wrong. Being popular isn't always right. But also maybe you don't know what you're talking about. So like, what's your next move? A lot of people go to like smearing. They say, oh, you're a hate monger, you're far right, you're anti-Semitic, you're this or that. And it's like, maybe, or maybe like you haven't thought about your argument and you just keep saying it. And then when it's like, people have an alternate perspective on it, you just panic and call them like hate mongers because you can't intellectually discuss the situation. So I've been seeing a lot of that happening online for the last couple of years. But I understand the situation at hand. Israel has a right to be pissed off. Israel has a right to retaliate. Israel has a right to attack Hamas. And Hamas, apparently, according to the news, I mean, I don't know what I believe at this point until like time goes by, but Israel and Palestine, they don't have the luxury that I have of waiting because it's like happening. So according to reports, they have captives. They're trying to strike some sort of deal. It's a very hot situation, and I understand why emotions are high, and I understand why Israel would be pissed and retaliate. I never said they shouldn't be or whatever, but it's like, what are you going to do? And the question is like, what really happened? Like, there's people in my comment section that say, oh, it started right now. And it's like, I know one thing for sure. I'm not saying it's justified. It's absolutely not. I'm not saying it's not horrific. It is horrific. It is terrible. It is evil. I condemn it with the fullest amount of like condemnation that I can. But people, like anybody that thinks that this conflict just started 2 days ago is an idiot. Like, it's not. It's absolutely been going on for like 100 years. You could argue thousands of years, but in general, it doesn't I'm not justifying it. It's just, that's just the truth. It's like with the Ukraine thing. It's like, yeah, you could say the conflict started the day that Putin invaded because that was the escalation, but it didn't start the day he invaded. And there was other escalations before it. And then he just went too far. But to say that it started that day is just historically inaccurate and stupid. So it's like, I think that there are people that vehemently support both sides. And I think both sides are heavily dishonest, where it's like, the Palestinian side is not going to report certain atrocities that their side does, and the Israeli side is not going to report certain atrocities that they do, or they're not going to hold it to the same standard. And, I'm not here to tell either country what to say or what to think, but there's people in the comment sections that'll be like, you need to do what I say, or you need to think this way. I'm just saying, be very cautious of the standards you want to hold other people to, because if your logic is, they attacked hundreds of innocent people, so now we're going to kill thousands or tens of thousands of innocent people on the other side. Would you want somebody to do that to you because of what your government did? I can't control what Barack Obama does. I can't control what Donald Trump does. I could vote for him, but apparently he'll still run around selling vaccines and doing stuff. I didn't vote for Biden, but apparently our country did. Are we to be held accountable by other countries for every atrocity done from George W. Bush until now? I wouldn't want. I would hope people know the difference between our government and us. But there's a lot of people that don't understand that when it comes to Israel Palestine, and they blame the entire country for what certain people are doing. And I mean, it's going to lead to chaos and destruction. And all you can really do is pray and hope for the best, because nobody's opinion is really going to shift the sands of situations. And Israel will get whatever money they want. They always do. It's not like my opinion matters. Israel gets more money than any other country, and they have for a long, long time. They're the original Ukraine. They've been getting money every year, all the time. And if you ever disagree with the amount that they're giving, you hate them and you want to hurt them. That's what they'll tell you. So you don't have a say. Like I'm letting you know, in America, you don't get a say about this. Like I'm self-aware. I know that I call myself a bougie slave. Like I'm a high-end slave. I live a good life. My life is good. I'm not broke. You know what I'm saying? I'm well respected. I live a good life, but I'm a bougie slave. Like if this were like a slaughterhouse, I'm like the chicken with a gold chain on. You know what I'm saying? I'm flossing out here, but I know my role. It's like I don't have. You think you're voting and you have all. You really. They don't give a shit what you think. This isn't your country. This isn't your tax dollar. You're just a worker. B. You work. You send your money to Congress, and they give it to foreign countries, and they say that you hate them and want to hurt them if you disagree with it. That's the truth. I know this. I've said my opinion, and I've gotten smeared 30 times, and they've said I've hated everybody when I don't, and they say I get it. I have no say in my country. I don't get to choose where my tax money goes to, whether it's Adam Schiff, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, or Joe Biden. Israel's going to get that money. Ukraine's going to get the money. Maybe Trump would do something different, maybe, but who knows? It's like I'm very self-aware, and I'm at peace with the fact that, like, it's not up to me. Other people, they like, they really think that their opinion matters a lot, and they're like voting for someone who's going to really change it. But I've already studied this stuff for years. I get what's going on. I understand the dynamic. What's going on in the Middle East sucks. It's extremely complex, but I guess we could just pretend like it's not complex, and we could just say, this is their 9/11. Well, what does that mean? 9/11 was a horrific event. What happened in Israel was a horrific event. But what happened after 9/11 was Republicans, boomers, no offense, but mostly boomers, got psyoped into giving up their own liberty that they're currently being persecuted with today. And they're all crying, oh, the FBI is coming after me. Well, maybe you shouldn't have gave them the power to do that during the war in Iraq, but you did. And you told everybody they were a terrorist. It's the same bullshit. The same stupid people that were doing the same stupid shit in 2001, 2002, 2003, they're doing the same shit now. They're like, oh, you're a terrorist if you don't want. Okay, then open up the floodgates, give them all the money, give them all our weapons. You know what I'm saying? Let Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump pass more speech laws. Yeah, let's give up our First Amendment too. Whatever you want to do. And then if I report on it, you can write 15 articles about me and say that I hate you when I don't. Sure, yeah, that'll totally not backfire. I mean, people have like the memory of a goldfish, but the good news is a lot of people are waking up, and a lot of people have noticed, like, after years of educating themselves. And it's an interesting situation that we're in. Those are kind of my overarching takes. As much as people want me to not do this, I'll continue to do it because I don't care. I'm not going to cave to that pressure. I know that most of the people in Israel are good people that have nothing to do with what their government's necessarily doing or not doing. In Palestine, it's the same thing. I think it's mostly good people there in a very unfortunate situation because they lived on that land, and then people came in the 1900s, took it, gave them a place to live, and then that place shrunk smaller and smaller and smaller. And I've known for a long time that they don't want it to exist at all. And both sides are kind of, doing a lot of stuff. And it's like, it's a very dicey situation, but, it sucks. And I know that there are innocent people on both sides that are going to lose their lives over this, just like there are in Russia and Ukraine. And apparently that's an unpopular opinion, but I will pray for the innocent people of Israel who got killed, and potentially ones that will have to enter more conflicts. It's horrific. And I'll pray for the people of Palestine also, the thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of kids that apparently most neocons and, war hawk right-wing media want to starve to death and kill. because of what Hamas did. And it's like, I guess, that's just what people want. I don't want that. I don't think it's very nice. But I saw there was a church that was destroyed today. Also, I think it was like the third oldest church. We'll see if those reports are true. I'm not surprised. I mean, Christians in America will make excuses for it without even knowing the situation. They'll be like, "Oh, they had to destroy that church." Maybe, yeah, maybe they did. Maybe someone was hiding in it. Maybe Hamas was there. Or maybe they just don't like churches and they used it as an excuse to bomb a church because they don't give a shit about your church and you think they do, but they don't. Maybe that's a possibility. Do you ever think about that? Do you ever study? Do you ever like learn, educate yourself? No, you just like repeat, like you talk like a cattle. You just run around like spewing talking points that you heard on media and you don't even know if it's true. It's like at this point, it's a dicey situation, but if people don't educate themselves and wake up, then it's just like, you're just going through the motions and like just saying very generic stuff about the situation. I'm going to read a few comments and then I'm probably going to try to keep this one somewhat brief. Someone said, "You have to be kidding. Tell me what the proper situation is." Someone said, "USA needs to stay out of other wars." Here's the thing, Janice. If you said that 3 weeks ago, they'd probably say that you're a Putin sympathizer. Now they'll say that you're a Palestinian like sympathizer. During the war in Iraq, they said you were a terrorist sympathizer. So, it's like it's the same narrative over and over again. I absolutely think that, we can provide a little help here or there, but America is kind of crumbling from within and we need to focus on ourselves. But you have to understand, I pretty much just consider American Congress completely captured. Like the Congress doesn't work for you. They don't ever agree on anything that has to do with you. They're always just selling vaccines. They're starting a war. That's the only thing they agree on is Operation Warp Speed and, Middle Eastern wars. And that's the way it is until people wake up. They fight over Trump and DeSantis and Trump and Biden, and they think it matters so much. And, if you want a show, they'll put a show on for you, but it's not necessarily going anywhere. So, yeah, I think a lot of people don't want war, but just like they just called you pro Putin or whatever, they're going to call you. If you don't support giving as much money as Israel wants, they're going to call you a Nazi. They're going to call you a neo-Nazi sympathizer. They're going to call you Hamas. They're going to call you terrorist. And it's going to be copy paste what George W. Bush did. They did the same thing. If you don't want to give up your right to not be spied on by the government, you're a terrorist. And now the government's using that same spying tactic on Republicans. It's hard to feel bad for my own party because they constantly do everything against their own interests and then cry about it because they get a character that tells us what they want to hear. It's like, I don't think that the government should be spying on innocent American citizens. But when the party that greenlit it is the one that it's being used against now, it's kind of poetic. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of poetic. Like you wanted to give up that liberty to spy on Muslims, and now they're spying on you. It's kind of like a tragedy and a comedy at the same time. It doesn't make it right. It's just like if you don't want that to happen, you can't give it up for someone else. And this is the issue with everything. 9/11 was a horrible event. You'll never hear me say that anything about it was okay. It's evil. It's terrible. Thousands of people died. What happened in Israel is horrific. People are dying. It's terrible. It's horrible. I'm not saying it's okay, but it's like when something like that happens, then what? What do you like? Now you have to give everything up or else you're a bad guy for the next 2 years. Like the emotions of the situation mean you need the Patriot Act. You need 15 wars overseas. You need to send your kids to go die for a foreign war that they're not even sure why they're there. And 10 years later, they find out it was a complete joke. Like what's up with that? How many people did we send to Vietnam? Vietnam was brutal. I love our soldiers. God bless them. They protect us. They're heroes. And I never speak bad about the military, but I'm sickened to know that now you could watch mainstream television and they're admitting that the war wasn't what they said it was. What about all the people that died there, though? What about all the kids and people's family members that died in Vietnam? You told us we couldn't question it. And now 30 years later, they admit on mainstream television that it wasn't what they said it was. So it's like every American has every right to feel skeptical of what happens next. When you have the uniparty agreeing on everything and them saying it's the 9/11, I'm agreeing to the sense that it is absolutely a horrific, life-changing event. But it would be like saying it's the pandemic of the situation. Yeah, pandemics are horrible, but what happened after the pandemic? They took our freedom, they took our liberty, they wouldn't let us speak out, they wouldn't let us protest, they wouldn't let us leave the house. What happened with 9/11? Just remember what happened after that, and just be ready to see these types of things coming. And this is where, even with the last Republican administration, as much as I like Trump more than Biden, if you stop following like Q-tards who say trust the plan and just like hallucinate whatever fantasy they want, and they cream their pants at the thought of Donald Trump, like, fighting the deep state overseas or something. If you actually watch some of the bills and the executive orders that Donald Trump passed, if you actually watch the bills and the executive orders that the Republican Congress passed, you'll realize that they're setting you up for all the things that you complain about 4 years later. It's like they'll pass this bill that completely blasphemes what it means to speak and what hate speech is and what a terrorist organization is. And then the feds label you a terrorist organization. And you're like, I'm not a terrorist. Of course you're not. But how many people did Trump make terrorist organizations? Have you ever looked up that? Have you ever seen how many people he classified? And they just go further and further and further until it's you. If you didn't want Alex Jones to get kicked off Twitter, it doesn't mean you're an Alex Jones sympathizer. It doesn't mean you agree with Alex Jones on everything. But you have to understand, Alex Jones is like the most extreme free speech person out there. And once they take him away, then they take the next guy away. And then they take the next guy away. And then they take the next guy away. And now they're at Jim Jordan. And all of a sudden, Republicans care so much. And they're like, oh my gosh, Twitter's out of control. They only gave a shit when it happened to them. I stood up for everyone's free speech, no matter how egregious I thought, as long as it wasn't like violent or illegal. If it was just like shitty opinions or something, I always stood up for them, because I understand how free speech works. And it's the same with hate speech, but it's easy to trick Americans. They literally act like cattle, and the people running the show think you're cattle. So don't act like cattle, and they won't treat you like cattle. But if you do, maybe they're not wrong. And I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying, like, snap out of it. It's like you got Republicans, they're just so enthralled with their president, whether it's George Bush or Trump, they'll pass the Patriot Act, but they'll like hallucinate. Oh, that's to fight the deep state. And it's like, read the bill. It's going to be used against you. If they call this a terrorist organization and this a terrorist organization and this is a terrorist organization, and now they got to go after Al-Qaeda overseas, so now they could spy on terrorists in America. And now Trump gets in and this person gets in and they name this a terrorist organization, and they're just expanding the list of terrorist organizations. They're just expanding the list that they can legally spy on. So if they dedicate MAGA as some sort of violent threat, I'm not saying you are. Most people are obviously not, but you set yourself up for this, because every time you give a speech law or a description where you let the government classify this group as this, they're eventually going to get to you. And they did. They're at you. They're at you right now. You know what I'm saying? They were at us in 2020. They fought all these wars overseas. And then in 2020, it was a lockdown. And everybody could say, well, Trump didn't start any foreign wars. And it's true. I might vote for him over DeSantis now, because I'm so annoyed with the bloodlust of his base is like rabid at the mouth for blood. It's creepy. But anyway, when it comes to Trump, it's like he didn't really start too many wars overseas. He did a good job overseas, but the war turned internal in 2020. And now the war is on American citizens. You can't leave your house. You can't go to the gym. You can't speak out. You can't post on your own Facebook page. Like, America turned communist. It's like all these things we said we were doing overseas, like we're doing this, we're doing that. Then all of that flipped inside. And then like conservatives figured out, they're like, wait a second. Our government's like, they hate us. And it's like, yeah, I don't know what's going on with it's like we're locked down for 2 years. And if you disagree with it, like, so am I supposed to believe a government and a pharmaceutical industry that did that to America, that we've never done anything overseas? How many people died during 2020 to 2023? How many people died of depression and suicide and overdosing on pills, because they weren't allowed to go to work or work out? All these things that are healthy for you, society, social circles, seeing your family, holidays, going to the beach, they were stripped from us for months. How many thousands upon tens of thousands upon hundreds of thousands of people died because of what the government did? So now we look at that and we say, so does that justify somebody going after innocent civilians because our government did that? What if they done overseas? How, are people allowed to attack civilians in America because of what we did to Libya? I just think it's a very dangerous precedent. And I know that when it comes to Israel and Palestine, there's a lot of deep-seated hatred on both sides for each other. It's a very it's a very dicey situation. But um I would say in general, as an American, you're not allowed to not want to fund Israel. Like, you have to understand your entire existence for the Republican Party. It's for this moment. Like, if you think you're going to go into Republican circles with Ben Shapiro and these type of people, and you're going to say, hey, I think America should focus on America and not fund this war. You thought the propaganda against you during the Ukraine war was bad when they called you pro-Putin and, Russian when you weren't. Just wait to hear what Republicans say about you if you say, hey, I want to stay out of this one. So I'm just letting you guys know. I figured this out 4 years ago, so I'm not like shocked or anything. But like, you don't get an opinion on this, okay? Your party literally exists for this moment, and wanting to focus on America is a hate crime violation according to most Republicans. So you have to understand that, like, that's a reasonable stance usually, but with this country and at this situation, it's absolutely not. Your entire existence, your entire political party, your entire movement is for this moment. You have to support this country. You have to support the war. You have to give them whatever they want. And it's going to be like Zelensky 2.0. Give them all of your stuff, or else Dan Crenshaw, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and the entire Republican establishment and media will come down on you and act like you're a hateful warmonger, if you don't. So I'm just letting you know. I'm just being honest. It's like, you could say that, you could think it, but you'll figure out, if you think that, you'll figure out really quickly that you're not allowed to think that. So I've already figured that out 4 years ago. I noticed that DeSantis was passing a law, and I read it and I'm like, isn't this like a hate speech law? Like, I don't agree with a lot of things on here, but I don't think you need to like criminalize speech or push into legislation like rules for hate speech. And the reason I did that, I'm just going to be clear for my audience, it's not because of the group at hand, whether it was Christians or Jews or Muslims or black or white. I don't think that any speech rules should be passed through Congress, because once they do it for one group, they get to do it for other groups, and then you're screwed. They always use something popular to push it through that you agree with, because then they're going to expand it to something you disagree with, but it's too late. It's already in legislation. So for the record, and for all these loser smear-mongering journalists out there that constantly defame me and lie about me, I don't disagree with the laws and the rules because I want to say all of them all the time. I disagree with it because I know how the First Amendment works, and I know they use popular things to eventually do unpopular things. But long story short, once I figured out that Trump and DeSantis were passing hate speech, trying to say that like speech was hate and whatever, the whole power of the right-wing media came down on me, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I'm not allowed to have that opinion. This is not my country, and this is not my political party. I'm just like a spectator in a game that's not real. So I feel like this situation, if you didn't already figure this out, you're going to figure it out very soon. I'll read a few more comments, and I'm just going to say this in general, and this is like the overarching theme of this stream. If you want videos of what's going on, there's other pages for that. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I don't share gruesome videos in the first 72 hours of like escalation of war. I've already watched people during Ukraine and Russia make massive mistakes. And to be honest, everybody wants to be first. Everybody wants clicks. I'm not sharing that stuff. So if you want that type of content, you can go get it elsewhere. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. It's just like, I'm just not going to provide that to you. There's going to be people that gung-ho support Israel, want to join their army, want to blow Palestine off the map. There's going to be people in Palestine that are psychotically obsessed with Palestine. Maybe they're from there, maybe they're not. If you want one of those things, you could find it somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be someone with conviction in this war. The same way if Texas was invaded, people of Texas would care a lot more than people in Australia. Australians might like Americans, but if you're Texas, you care about Texas getting invaded. Israel cares about Israel more than most people in America do. Some love it as much, but you get it. Like, I understand the dynamic of the situation, and I'm not here to tell people not to be gung-ho about it if you want to. I'm just not really doing that here. And with that being said, I'm in no way, shape, or form justifying any attack on civilians. Obviously, I'm not doing that. I never would. It's evil. It's horrible. What Hamas did is gross. And it's probably extremely short-sighted because Israel's way stronger than it. Like, this is the nicest thing I could say to like the Palestinians that maybe Israelis would also respect that I said. Um, I can't say like I don't know who's supporting Palestine. They say Iran is, maybe some of the Muslim world is, but as far as armies, like Palestine seems way outnumbered by Israel, and they have a lot of money and power, and they have a lot of weapons. So, you got to be really thoughtful with what you do because you're not living in a fair world or a fair playing field. So if you make an attack, like they have way more than you. So something to think about when people are like getting pissed off, etc. With that being said, I mean, I don't think the proper solution is to starve a bunch of innocent Palestinians. I mean, that seems pretty gross and borderline genocidal. But someone said Israel can't bang with Iran. I mean, that's another thing too. Is like Iran has 70 something million people. And I'll say this with America right here. I know this might not be popular, but as far as like Russia and Ukraine, when we fought with Russia and Ukraine, Russia is no joke, right? Russia's not Afghanistan. Russia's not Iraq. Russia's not Palestine. Russia's Russia. China may or may not back Russia, right? China is enormous. That's not somebody we want to fight with either. Iran is a massive country. Like Iran by itself, maybe America could beat, but at the same time, it's not something I really want to find out. So it's bigger than just Israel and Palestine, where it's like with Israel and Palestine, yes, Israel's existence is at stake. Palestinians' existence is at stake. Like this is all very real. But when America gets involved, it's like, you already have Russia and China pretty much more against you than they've ever been because of what you did in Ukraine. How much can you really afford to do, and how much do you really want to find out? I would like to think that there could be a deal struck, and I know it's going to be really hard for at this point after what just happened in Israel, but like, everyone's like war, 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 war. Like, what does war mean to you? Are you fighting the war? Like, I have respect for Jews who like live in Israel and they fight for their country. I have respect for that. It's like they really put on the uniform and did that. I have respect for people who flew over to Ukraine and said, yo, I support Ukraine in the war. I'm going to join the army. It's like, dude, respect, man. That's crazy. And people on other sides that are in military, but like you got people like Jordan Peterson that, he's like, wow, he's like screaming on Twitter. It's like, do you think that disheveled pillhead is going to go fight a war? No, he's like, it's like his brain got fried or something after his little 2-year pill binge, like rehab thing. And now he just seems like an empty vessel, like an intelligent guy who's like a soulless, brainless, empty vessel, like puppet guy. Dude's a total clown. It's like he could talk about the war all he wants. He's never going to fight. And I'm not, it's just one of those things where it's like, you're not just doing this. Like if you're fighting Russia and Ukraine, you're opening the whole world to this massive, massive conflict with multiple countries involved. And at a certain point, it's hard to tell who's going to win or lose. All I know is a lot of people are going to die. So like how bad do left wingers and some right wingers and neocons, how bad do they want that part of Ukraine to be Ukraine? Like, is that is that really important to them? Because the thing about Russia and Ukraine, I don't want to oversimplify it, but Ukraine used to be Russia or part of the Soviet Union, and now it's not. I'm not saying that it doesn't have the right to defend itself. Ukraine has the right to defend itself. Russia has the right to be pissed off. America has the right to get involved in the war, but at a certain point, it's like, how far do you want to overextend? How much money do you want to waste? How much money can you afford to waste? People can't even afford shit here. With, Israel and Palestine, they've been fighting for 80 years. Yeah, I understand the situation is dicey. It's got Iran involved. Like, how far do they want to push this stuff? But, it's not my opinion. Luckily for those who don't agree with it, my opinion doesn't matter. No one's going to listen to me. I'm not a war general. I don't run any of these countries. So my perspective on it isn't really important. What's going to happen is going to happen. Someone said Anomaly tries to play neutral, but he will see in the end. Well, I'm concerned about my country, and you have to understand that at a certain point, my country is wearing down more and more and more and more. And our Congress doesn't give a shit about our country. Republicans will jump up and down for a foreign country and the pharmaceutical industry more than they ever will do for you. So you guys can role play fantasies with Trump and DeSantis if you want, but you're not ever going to get anything because you don't understand the fundamental problem. Our country doesn't even serve us. So it's like, at the end of the day, you can take a stance that you think is righteous. But let's just say the Iraq war. You thought everything that you were doing was so righteous. Like, oh, you're a fence sitter if you don't want to go fight these terrorists and pass the Patriot Act. And now that same Patriot Act is being used to persecute you. So your righteous stance in war of not being a fence sitter ended up getting you investigated by the feds because you gave them that power under the guise of going after Muslims. So maybe you should educate yourself on what's going on. I might sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, or I might sound like I'm sitting on the fence to some, but the reason that I don't have as strong of a stance as people would want me to is because I'm highly, highly, highly educated on certain topics, and I could probably wipe the floor with a bunch of half-wits that are putting flags in their bios and drooling at the mouth, and they have every right to do that. But you have to understand, in general, I know a lot about this topic, and I know a lot more than a lot of conservatives, and the official narrative that people are going with is bullshit. But the thing is, as a content creator or whatever the hell you want to call me, it's like, do I really want to argue with people for 2 weeks about this when tensions are high? No, I don't, because I understand why tensions are high. I understand why people feel the way they feel. And it doesn't, like, if you say that George Bush started the war in Iraq and, he screwed up and Obama screwed up, it doesn't make you a fence sitter. If you like drool over Mitt Romney and you drool over like a Republican and then you hate a Democrat, it just makes you an idiot. It makes you like a cattle. You're like a cattle more than you are even like an intellectual thinker. Like, that doesn't make you a virtuous person. You like pick a side and you like, it's like both sides are controlled in America. So it doesn't, like, your like choice doesn't matter. Intelligence is like, oh, it's BS, so it's not fence sitting. It's just being realistic. And I'm being realistic. I could tell you, I could put a flag in my bio on Twitter today. It doesn't matter. My flag in the bio is not going to change anything. I could stand with a country. What does that mean? If I were to stand with Israel, I'd probably go over there and literally stand with them. But if you're standing in America, is sitting at a chair saying, I stand with Israel, okay, that's nice that you're telling people that you support them, but you're not really standing with them because, at the end of the day, it's like, their military needs all the help they could get. Everybody that's a citizen there has to join the IDF because they're short-staffed. The country doesn't have that many people in it. So it's like, you stand with Ukraine, do you? Did you go there? Did you fight there? You're not doing shit. So at least I'm self-aware. It's like I could say all this virtuous stuff, but I really just want to be honest, is I feel horrible for the innocent lives that were taken in Israel. And I feel horrible for innocent lives that will be taken in Palestine and that have been in the past. And some media reports it and some media doesn't. It's like if you're Palestinian media and you throw a rock at a guy and he shoots you and they're like, oh, he shot me, but I just had a rock. Okay, but maybe you shouldn't have thrown a rock at a guy with a gun. Like, that's not that smart. Whether you're Israeli or Palestinian, it's like if he's got a gun and you got a rock, Israel's not going to equal what you're doing. They're going to do it harder. Like, that's just how the world works. So think about what you do first. And then on the other side, if they kill Palestinian children, you're never going to hear about it in Ben Shapiro media because he'll never talk about it. So, it's like the reality of war is very brutal and very tough. And you could follow one side or the other and you could pick the side and you could fund them and you could tell them, to beat up your enemies or whatever. And you have every right to do that. I'm not going to do that because I understand the dynamic of the situation and it's just rough. And at a certain point, it's like, when does our country get to focus on us and who, which side of that equation, like how much do they really like us? How like what are we going to get? Like, you get what I'm saying? It's like, what happens if Adam Schiff is right? And this is the Israel 9/11 and they use it as justification to start 30 years worth of war, and America gets drained and our economy gets completely imploded and inflation skyrockets and America have no say. And we're locked down again like we were during the pharmaceutical Operation Warp Speed, like lockdown thing. And like, okay, so because that's a horrible situation, now what? Now I have no opinion. Now I have to support them. Now I have to give them money. Now we have to start 15 more wars. We have to, right? Because you're emotional for 2 weeks. I don't know. It's like the fact that they're already calling this a 9/11 makes me want to think back to the 9/11, which was thousands of people died in America. It was horrific. It was terrible. We said we were going to go after bin Laden, who did the attack. according to the media. And then we ended up in Iraq because we wanted to fight Iraq for different reasons. And then we ended up in Libya because we wanted to fight Libya for different reasons. And then we ended up destabilizing Syria for different reasons. And then millions of refugees from all over the place ended up in Europe and America for different reasons. And then everybody complains about illegal immigration and refugee immigration in Europe and America, but they don't realize that it's their own damn wars that are causing it. And they don't like, it's like the controlled, they're like, let's go fight these wars. And it's like a whole little show that you guys are like fighting the left, but they're all working together and just, it's all going as planned, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But in general, all I'm saying is like, just because I wanted the freedom to have liberty and privacy, it didn't make me a bin Laden supporter. I don't like bin Laden. I don't like Al Qaeda. I never liked, organizations like that. But I was told that by Republicans 100 times during the 2000s. They said, if you don't want all of these things, you must be one of them. How come you don't want the government to spy on everyone? It's like, well, I have nothing to hide. I'm like 15 years old. What are you talking about? I'm barely I have nothing. But in general, it's just the president of once that is used for them, it's going to be used for you. And it has been used on you, and it's being used on you right now. So that's all I'm really going to say. No matter what you support and who you support, understand that at times like this, when emotions rise, they will get all the funding bills they ever want. And if you disagree with it, you're a terrorist. They will get whatever weapons they want. They will get whatever support they want. And your country pretty much just exists to do that. And you don't even get to have an opinion on it. And I guarantee Republicans are probably in the shadows somewhere drafting more hate speech laws to infringe on your First Amendment again. And it'll eventually be used against you if it hasn't already. But if you want all that stuff, knock yourself out. But it's not going to be what you thought it was. So in general, I'm going to read a few more, then I'm going to roll out. Someone said, why are you so quick to believe the spin so far? Do I sound so quick to believe the spin so far? Is that your take on it? I believe everything I'm reading. Yeah, that's what you took from the narrative. That's your takeaway. I'm just believing everything I'm saying. The guy who says I'm not sharing any videos, I'm not rushing to a massive post. That's your perspective. You all right, bro? You drunk or something? Let me see. Someone said, as far as I know, the only thing we fund is the Iron Dome. Well, the key part is as far as you know. I mean, just look up the amount of foreign aid we give them. So you could do the research yourself. Let me see. Someone said Dems were the fake peace group. Now they both. I mean, here's my final take, and then I'm gonna roll it back. Both parties just play a role. Okay, George Bush played a role. He fooled Republicans, and Republicans are too pig-headed. They never admit it, and they're like, oh, he fooled us, but the next guy's so different, but he's not. The next guy fooled you also, but whatever. And then Obama gets in, and Obama plays a role, and Obama's the cool guy, but he starts 7 wars in the Middle East, and Democrats are like, oh, I don't know. And then you get Donald Trump, and he does everything you want him to do until the lockdown happens, and then he ends up turning into a Bill Gates Jr., and he's nothing like what he used to be. But, it totally wasn't you. It's not your fault. It's the other guy's fault. And then Biden gets in. Oh, perfect timing. Biden gets in to mandate the stuff, and now there's a war with Ukraine. Oh, wow. And now there's a brewing war with Iran. Who wants to start a war with Iran? Left wingers or right wingers today? Probably more right wingers. So, if Republicans win the next election, it's only probably because they want you to, because they need to start their new war. It's like, all right, well, that guy did what he needs to do. Now this guy, but you perceive it a different way. Like you think I'm fence sitting. So you're like, oh, no, it totally matters. These people really care about us. They don't care about you. But if you want to think they do, knock yourselves out. You're not the only one. So, that's my position. I'm not going to be bullied into it either way. I will pray for the innocent people that were killed. I completely disagree with it. I completely disagree with starving and killing a bunch of kids as retaliation. I already pretty much know what everyone's going to say or do because I figured out who everybody was 3 years ago. So when I log into Twitter now, it's like watching season 20 of a show I've seen. Like I already, I know who DeSantis is. I know who like Nikki Haley is and Dan Crenshaw and Shapiro are. And it's like, I already know what the characters are going to do. It's like too predictable. And that's why I've always said, this is who I would vote for if the election were tomorrow. I'm not fence sitting, but you trust politicians and I don't. So I'm not putting my whole trust into Trump or DeSantis because that would be stupid based on everything that we've lived through. And one moment can change everything. One war, one lockdown, someone you thought was cool could be a total loser. They could have just been an actor telling you what you want to hear. And in my opinion, that's what a lot of Republicans are. It's like their overarching agenda, it has nothing to do with you, but they just tell you things you want to hear because they know that's how you'll follow them. So, I kind of see it like that, where I got to watch it all really play out. Here's what I will say though, is I pray for peace, and really, like, the world, I would love to see it like come to some sort of conclusion. But this is what I will say before I leave, and this is going to go over an hour now, which I didn't want it to, but that's fine. Um, I understand that certain issues are one-sided issues where one side is right and one side is wrong. That's true to certain things in society where you're like, this is 100% right, you're 100% wrong, and there's no nuance. And I understand that, and I've seen situations like that. When it comes to world tension, everyone can act like America and Israel and who are we aligned with? I don't know, maybe Saudi Arabia. I don't even know who our allies are. Justin Trudeau of Canada, he dresses up in blackface and like an Indian and whatever. Like, we can act like our side is completely innocent. Israel, America, Canada, whatever, whoever else, Germany, I don't know who else is with us, but like, we can say we've never done anything wrong. We're 100% righteous. We're the best, and the only thing that's ever happened was 9/11, and everything else doesn't exist, and like, we're righteous in whatever we do because of that. We could say that to ourselves, but it's not true. And there's a way to honor people who died, back up our innocent victims, and then also get retribution. There's a way to do that without being so dishonest. But when it comes to these world conflicts, at the end of the day, if people aren't honest, they'll never change. Like, if your analysis of Russia and Ukraine is Russia did 100% of this and NATO and America did nothing, you're not the good guy anymore. You're lying. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to say Russia's good. They're probably not. You don't have to say Putin's a good leader. You don't have to say that. You don't have to concede an inch. But if you will just say we did nothing, we didn't start this war at all, it was all them, you're lying, and the war is going to brew on, and Russians are going to die, and Ukrainians are going to die, and you could pat yourself on the back because you have a Ukraine flag in your bio, or you say whatever, but these innocent people are going to die because we're not being honest about our relationship in it. And in order to strike a peace deal, you have to admit what you're doing. If you were giving weapons to Ukraine, which they were, Trump brags about giving weapons to Ukraine during his administration. Lindsey Graham, who he's friends with, was over there declaring war on Russia in 2016. So I'm not blaming Trump or Lindsey Graham. I'm just saying it's a lot more complex than just the day they invaded. But if we don't want to say that happened, then expect war to rage on, because there is going to be no compromise. And that's what the warmongering, like bloodlust media wants you to think, that we've never done anything wrong. It's always the other side. And the only solution is to wipe them off the face of the map. And it's just going to lead to more bloodshed, more violence, and more innocent victims on all sides. So, it's the same thing with Israel and Palestine. I understand that a lot of media will tell you that Israel has never done anything wrong and Palestine has never done anything right. Maybe it's true. You could believe that if you want, but I believe the situation is a lot more dicey than that. And this is not justifying what Hamas just did at all. I'm just saying, when the land was taken in the 1900s and these people were displaced and their area got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, they've been wanting to wipe them off the face of the earth. So now they have an actual excuse to do it. And it's like, not saying it's right. I'm just saying in general, it's like, it's very complex, and as far as the allies, like people mention Iran, also Russia, you know what I'm saying? Russia, Iran, there's other people that are loosely or heavily aligned with, like, you can act like, yeah, they've never done anything wrong. Sure. But it's not true. And in order to strike a peace deal, which is going to be harder and harder the more bloodshed happens, there's going to have to be honesty on both sides. But if there's honesty on neither side, if the Palestinians don't want to budge a single inch and the other side doesn't want to budge an inch, then you get war. And that's what you see in Russia and Ukraine. Russia doesn't want to budge. Ukraine doesn't want to budge. And thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of young Ukrainians and Russians are dying. For how long is this going to last? Until what happens? One of them's wiped off the face of the earth, or one of them loses so much that they have to concede and strike a deal, which they probably could have struck 3 years ago if they wanted to, but they didn't want to at the time. So, I think in general, life is not perfect. There's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be war. I'm not an overly idealistic person that I think everything can be at peace. Sometimes a peaceful situation doesn't work. It's just true, unfortunately, in this world. But, as an American citizen, as an Israeli, as a Palestinian, as a Ukrainian, as a Russian, anybody, they have to ask themselves, at what cost? What are we doing? And is what I'm being told the reality of what's really happening? And I can't tell you what's happening on the ground in Israel, Palestine, because I've never been there. I'm only seeing things I see online, but I do know enough to read and research and listen to both sides. And I understand that there are people that will never concede. They're not looking for a solution. They're looking for, a fight. And, when people are looking for a fight, they're going to get a fight. And there's really not much I could do about it. So, what's the point of even speculating on it too much? Because if both sides want to fight, they're going to get one. It just sucks because it's like, what people think it is and what it really is, are, in my opinion, two different things. So see, someone in the comment section is saying, I want blood. Well, here's what I'm wondering. It's like, are you gonna join whatever army you want? Because like I don't even know which side you're talking about, but like you say that, like, are you going there to fight the war, or are you just talking about it? Because I don't know. Someone said the rest of the world will become Palestinianized. Someone said, I mean, here's what I will say. I do think that if you look at the Western world and you look at America, look at how the media is treating us. Look at how they're talking about us. Look at what they did to us during the pandemic. Like you're seeing this slow dehumanization of us, right? Outside of the war, God bless the innocent victims, not justifying it. I don't feel like the media likes me in this country. I don't feel like they like me ethnically. I don't feel like they like my religion. It seems like the media in this country viciously hates me ethnically and viciously hates my religion, like viciously. You know what I'm saying? More vicious than I've ever seen. And they cover it up by projecting it onto others and saying that everyone else is doing what they're doing. And it's really dark. So it's like, with that being said, that's a evidence cue that I have that something's really off here. And when something's off here, I don't just point the blame at random innocent people or anything, but I start to study and research, like, why is this happening? Why are they doing this? Like, what's their end goal? Like, why are they dividing everybody all the time? Why are they demonizing people who like America? Why are they trying to turn boys into girls? Why are they demonizing families? Why do they hate, like basic normal structure of families that's popular all over the world? Like, what's going on? So I spent a lot of time researching, reading, observing, and trying to figure out what's going on. And the more I figure out, the less I want to say, because the more I say, the more I get in trouble. And the more I say, the more people don't want to hear it. So it's like people got to figure it out on their own terms, because at a certain point, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And that's just how the world works. And also, life is very complex. It's not always as simplistic as people want it to be. So now that I figured out what's going on, it's like, yeah, we'll see what happens. But in our country, we're facing a massive, massive crisis. There is an open border that's purposely open, and politicians can't come together over it. Isn't that weird? How come the politicians in America can't even come together over this? Someone like Geraldo Rivera, who's been like a right-wing media, goofball for 20 years. It's like he cries about, illegal immigration all the time and calls you a racist and a neo-Nazi and all these false slanders because you want border security. He literally said Trump was doing a Hitler quote when Trump made a speech about illegal immigration. Like, that's what a liar Geraldo Rivera is. But anyway, it's like, how come the left and the right wing can't even agree on our own border? Like, isn't that a little weird? But 100% of Congress will agree with a foreign war against another country that's halfway around the world. If they could do that, but also secure our border, I wouldn't be so skeptical. But the fact that everything they always come together on is either like a vaccine sale, it's either a big pharmaceutical scam, or it's like a massive foreign war. At what point do people realize that neither side of Congress gives a crap about you? And if people in America can't figure that out, it's just going to keep continuing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I see all these impending problems in America. And I do think that people have to just be very careful with what they're willing to allow. Because if you're willing to say that even though Hamas isn't everyone in Palestine, we have to kill a bunch of kids because of what they did. If you say that, and I'm not saying that they're good, and I'm not saying that they're righteous. I'm obviously not saying that. I'm not saying that there should be no retaliation. But if you literally, like I'm watching dozens of Republicans now, they're justifying the starvation of children, literally, like not metaphorically, like literally kill the kids. Who cares? It's like, would you want someone to do that because of what Obama did? It is very similar. People are like, it's not. It is the same. Obama did a bunch of shit overseas and killed a bunch of kids, and you didn't have any say in it. But nobody's allowed to retaliate on us because we have a huge army. That's the only thing standing in our way. And I get it. I'm glad to live in America. We're very lucky that we're such a strong country. Thank God. If not, half the world would probably be over here doing what's happening. So it's like, if you're willing, but I do believe in a God, and if you're willing to justify innocent people in another country getting slaughtered, whether it's Israel or Palestine, if you're so gung-ho about one side of the war that you think it's okay that people hurt innocent people, which there is on both sides. There's Palestinians who think that that's fine. There's Israelis who think that that's fine. And, it's just like, if you do allow that, don't be surprised when people do it to us, because they already want to do it to us. So like, if you have 90% of the Republican Party being like, oh, that's fine, that's what they deserve because of what those people did. What do you think your government's been doing all over the world for the last 30 years? What do you think? They've been building schools? Did you actually believe that? They're just building schools. What kind of schools? Because you don't even want to send your kids to these schools. So what kind of schools were they building in Afghanistan? Because now everybody complains about American government schools. Oh, they're trying to make my kid gay. Oh, there's rainbow flags everywhere. Oh, well, maybe those were the schools they were building in Islamic countries too. I wonder how much they like that. It's like, you get what I'm saying? Like, you got to really think about before you like have this bloodlust, because everything what comes around goes around. And at the end of the day, like, you might think that it's the right decision, but if you're willing to justify violence on innocent people in any country based on what their government or a group did, why shouldn't everyone in the world think that about you? Because your government's done things too. Susan said, you're correct. White Christians are under attack. Keep inspiring and educating the naive. I was once blind. Thank you, Susan Robertson. I mean, in general, listen, I don't think anybody of any ethnicity should be demonized, dehumanized, and hated on. I'm just saying the media, I mean, just look at all the stuff they do. Obviously, they don't like Christians. They don't like people who vote against abortion. They blur out the face of a black murderer, but not a white one. Like, it's like stuff that's so obviously transparently true that, like, they'll call you a racist for noticing, but it's just like obvious. It's like you're pushing it so far any person can see. Like, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It's a fighter podcast with Anthony Smith and Bisping. Anthony Smith is biracial. I think he's black and white, but he was just like mocking the absurdity of that as well, like not saying the race because they're trying to. It's crazy stuff. But God bless you guys. God bless your family. God bless America. God bless the world. I'm going to sum it up like this, and I'm just going to go through all my points, then I'm out. I'm noticing that Republican pages that are super pro-Zionist, pro-Israel, for the first time, I've never seen this in a long time, but especially now, they're getting absolutely ratioed by their supporters. Patrick Bet-David, the typical liberal. Go look at their comment section. I'm shocked. I thought most people would agree with them. They don't. Which means that one of two things. People are learning from other sources, and they don't have the same perspective as most Republican media does. And I know actually this has been a conversation that like has been very blacklisted and controlled over the last few years. And this is all I'll say is I do think that there is a case for Israel. It's just, if you're not willing to debate it and converse, and you try to blacklist everybody who disagrees with you, you're actually building a coalition of people that disagree with you because they're educating themselves otherwise. And that's why I always thought it was so stupid, because it's like every time they do that stuff, they're just making more people think about it. So the proper way to get people on your side would be to have a fair discussion about it over the last couple of years and really challenge the ideas and prove that you're right. But the game they've been playing in Republican media for years has been like, if anybody speaks about speech laws, call them an anti-Semite. If anybody disagrees with us, they hate us. If anybody's this, they're terrorists. They've been running the George Bush playbook for years, calling you a terrorist, whatever. And it's backfired tremendously. Like, and this is the thing that I'm so grateful for, is at the end of the day, I don't have the most money. I don't have the most media power. I don't have a team of lawyers behind me. I don't have a massive media conglomerate. I'm not Ben Shapiro. I'm not, you know what I'm saying, PBD podcast. And God bless them. I'm not, nothing wrong with them. I'm just saying all I have in this world is my word, my character, and what I say and what I do. And what's always carried me has been the fact that people trust me, not because I demand that they trust me, not because I run a lot of ads, not because I'm puppeted around Republican media and everybody just sees me everywhere. I've been trusted more than most because I've always been honest and I've always kept it real. And that's all I have. That's the only like leg up that I have. And I'm watching people just get absolutely ratioed, that they've always taken the safer stance, or they've always gone with like what the Republicans want you to say. And it's like, people don't like it anymore because that echo chamber has been unchallenged for 4 years. So you think you're putting up a generic statement to stand with the country and everyone's going to agree with you. And 95% of the audience disagrees, but it's not necessarily because they're all hateful and bad. It's because, people have been like pushed into the corners of the internet and like, go away. And then they just listen to someone else. It's always better to debate and have tough conversations and make your case like realistically. Because I think that there is a case for Israel. Like, if you're Israeli and you love Israel and you want to defend Israel, I totally understand that. I think it's completely understandable. Like, why wouldn't you? You know what I'm saying? If you're Jewish in America and you support Israel, totally understand it. If you don't, I understand it. If you're Christian in America and you love Israel, I get it. If you're not, I'm understanding of all. Like, the reason I feel the way I feel is because I've considered everything. I've listened to everyone, and then I come to my own conclusions. And sometimes I think the truth is black and white, and other times I think it's a gray area. You know what I'm saying? I love America, but I'm not going to act like America's never done anything wrong in the world. That's not true. And if I just sat here and said America's never done anything wrong, it doesn't make me a strong American. It just kind of makes me a liar. And then you break trust with a lot of people. So I think the best way to gain trust is to just be pretty honest. And I think a lot of conservative media hasn't done that around this topic. And at a time that they need support the most, they're not really getting it because people don't necessarily agree with their narrative. So I think I think that is a product of just like not challenging that echo chamber for years. And I just find it interesting that that's even happening. But, I would say Israel's way bigger than Palestine, unless like the whole world comes behind Palestine. America is still a really strong army, but personally, I don't want to find out what happens when the world comes together. That's just my take. It's really sad to me. I don't want to see Russia and China and Iran and Palestine and America and Israel and all. Like, that sounds like a nightmare. I wish people could just figure it out and get along. That would be my preference, but my preference doesn't matter, and I don't know what exactly is going to happen. But I will say this, now that, and I'm just going to bring it up again real quick if I can. Hopefully my video doesn't freeze. Let's see. Hold on one sec, folks. I'm just trying to like load this video of Adam Schiff, like what he said. Let's see. It might not let me, but all right, I guess we're done. My bad. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/raretalk for $5 a month. You can help support me, support the show. If you haven't noticed, unlike other channels, I don't work with very many sponsors, sometimes none at all. And part of the way I'm able to do that is with the dreamrare.com shop and patreon.com